In the heart of the Xanthari dominion floated a palace made of living crystal and stolen dreams. The walls pulsed with soft violet light, and the air smelled of synthetic jasmine and cold metal. Every corridor echoed with the quiet footsteps of beings who were not allowed to speak unless spoken to. Among them moved V739. She was tall and slender, with skin like moonlit pearl and long silver hair that shimmered even in dim light. Her eyes were the color of storm clouds and held no expression. Her wings, translucent and veined with faint gold, were always folded tightly against her back, not because they hurt, but because she had been taught that unfolded wings were a sign of defiance. And defiance was punished. V739 had no memory of. A time before the Dominion, she knew only catalogs and collars, soft collars lined with neural threads that hummed when she stepped too far from her assigned sector. She knew the weight of a noble's hand on her shoulder, the sound of laughter when she poured wine without spilling a drop, the way guests would lean close and whisper things like exquisite or rare or mine. She was not alone, though. Curled at the foot of her sleeping platform was a small creature no bigger than a house cat with scales, the color of burnt copper and eyes that did not match. One was deep green, the other pale amber. His name was Scrap, and he had been given to her 3 cycles ago as a reward for perfect obedience. The Xanthari called him a pet, a toy, a failed experiment, too small to be a true dragon, too quiet to be useful. But to V739 he was warmth. Scrap did not speak, but he made sounds, a low hum when she was near, a soft chitter when she was sad, a rumble like distant thunder when danger neared. He would press his small body against her leg during inspections, and somehow the overseers always seemed to look away a little faster. Today was auction day. The grand gallery had been prepared for hours. Floating platforms carried trays of nectar and rare fruits. Holographic displays shimmered with profiles of available beings, genetically refined singers, armored warriors, bioluminescent dancers. And then there was V739. She stood on a raised dais, wearing a gown woven from light threads that shifted color with her breath. Her collar glowed faintly, indicating her status as premium-tier pleasure creature. The auctioneer, a tall Xanthari with voice modulators built into his throat, spoke in smooth tone. Slot 739, rare elf hybrid lineage unknown. Aesthetic perfection. Obedience rating 99.8% compatible with all major neural command systems. Includes bonded companion unit designation. Scrap non-threatening decorative only. Bids came quickly from nobles draped in iridescent cloaks and military officers with cybernetic eyes. One offered a fleet of mining drones, another a moonlet in the outer rim. A third promised exclusive breeding rights. V739 did not flinch. She kept her gaze lowered. Her hands clasped her breath. Even then, a new voice cut through the chamber. Not modulated, not amplified, just human, rough and tired. "I'll take her." Silence fell. The speaker stood near the back, not in fine robes, but in a worn flight jacket patched at the elbows. Her boots were scuffed, her dark hair tied back in a messy knot. She carried no weapon, no entourage, just a data chip in one hand and exhaustion in her eyes. Lila Cross, salvage captain, registered with the Fringe Alliance. She had no credits, no fleet, no moonlet. But she held up. The chippy just cleared a derelict freighter near Ceres. 9 found a Xanthari debt ledger inside your records show. You're owed 27 million credits by the Krell Syndicate. I recovered their black box and their insurance just paid out full. Settlement, I'm using it to buy her. Murmurs rippled through the room. The auctioneer hesitated, then consulted his wrist terminal. The debt was real, the payment verified, and by Dominion law, any verified credit could be spent on auction lots sold. Talela Cross V739 was uncollared for the first time in memory. The neural threads retracted with a soft hiss. She swayed slightly but did not fall. Scrap leapt onto her shoulder and let out a warning growl. Low and sharp, Lila approached slowly. She did not reach out, did not smile too wide, did not call her pet or prize. "Hey," she said softly. V739 said nothing. "You don't have to talk yet," Lila said. "But you should know, you're not a thing. You're someone." Pause. "What do you want to be called?" The question hung in the air like a star too bright to look at directly. No one had ever asked her that before. Names were for people, not for catalog numbers. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Lila waited. Finally, in a voice like dry leaves, V739 whispered. Ellerate felt strange on her tongue, Unfamiliar yet right, Alara. Leela repeated as if testing the weight of it. Yeah, that suits you. Scrap tilted his head and made a soft clicking sound. They left the palace without fanfare. No guards stopped them. No alarm sounded. The Xanthari considered the transaction complete and binding once sold. A pleasure creature was no longer their concern. Outside the orbital station hung the Iron Bloom, a battered freighter with patched hull plates and mismatched thrusters. It looked nothing like the sleek yachts of the nobles, but it had a heartbeat, a rhythm in its engines that felt alive. Inside the ship was cluttered, but clean tools hung in neat rows. Food packets stacked by Type A, single hammock strung between two bulkheads and a small nest of thermal blankets in the corner. This is yours now, Lila said, gesturing to the nest. Alara stared at it. You can sleep wherever you want. She added, you can eat when you're hungry. Speak when you want. Move without. Asking, Alara took a step forward, then another. Her wings twitched but did not unfold. Scrap jumped down and began sniffing a panel near the floor, then sneezed a tiny puff of smoke. Lila laughed. Not at him, but with him. He's gonna burn a hole in my ship one of these days. Lara looked at her. You're not scared of him, nah? Lila said, he's small, but he's got spirit just like you. Alara did not understand spirit, but she felt something stir in her chest. Something warm and fragile, like the first crack in ice. That night she lay in the nest, Scrap curled against her ribs, his warmth steady, his breathing slow. She stared at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the ship and the distant pulse of stars outside. For the first time in her life, she was not waiting for a command, she was just being, and somewhere deep in her bones a name began to take root. Lara, not V739, not ornament, not prize. Alara. The ship drifted through the void, quiet and steady, carrying a woman who had just been given a future, and a dragon who had never stopped believing she deserved one. Life aboard the Iron Bloom moved at its own rhythm, slow at first, then steady, like a heartbeat finding its pace. Alara learned to walk without waiting for permission to sit, without being told to eat, without measuring each bite for approval. She still moved quietly, still folded her wings close, but now it was by choice, not command. Lila never raised her voice, never gave orders. She asked instead, do you want tea or water? Would you like to see the engine room or stay up here? Scrap followed, Alara everywhere, his small body growing just a little each day, his scales darkening from copper to deep rust, his eyes watching everything with quiet intensity. One evening, as the ship coasted past the rings of a dead gas giant, Lila sat cross-legged on the floor repairing a comms relay. Alara watched from the doorway. You can sit if you want, Leela said without looking up. Alara stepped inside and lowered herself slowly onto a crate. Scrap hopped onto her lap and let out a soft rumble. Lila smiled. You know, he's not really a pet, right? Alara looked down at Scrap. He felt like a pet, warm, loyal, small. He's something else, Leela said. I read the Xanthari files after we left. They called him a failed unit, but the genetic markers don't match any known dragon breed. They match the void. Dracus. Alara had never heard that name. They were real once, Lila continued, ancient creatures that lived in the cold between stars. They didn't breathe fire. Like old myths say, they breathed vacuum. They folded space with their wings and sang in frequencies no machine could record. The Xanthari hunted them to extinction, or so they claimed. Scrap blinked his mismatched eyes and sneezed a tiny spark. Maybe they missed one, Lila said softly. Alara touched Scrap's head gently. He leaned into her palm and hummed. Days turned into weeks. They visited fringe stations, traded scrap metal for food and fuel, avoided Xanthari patrols by slipping through asteroid fields where sensors struggled to see clearly. Alara began to help with small tasks, sorting parts, cleaning filters, even learning to read basic ship symbols. Lila taught her without pressure, just pointing and naming. This is oxygen, this is power, this is home. Then the drones came. It happened near Ceres 9, a quiet belt of shattered rock where the Iron Bloom was scavenging a derelict cargo hauler. The ship's sensors picked up movement too fast for debris, too silent for a ship. Leela frowned at the screen. That's not natural. Before she could react, 3 obsidian shapes shot from behind a boulder, sleek and sharp like wasps made of night. They hovered for a second, then streaked toward the Iron Bloom hunter drones. Xanthari Makalila slammed the thrusters to full. The ship groaned as it lurched sideways, One drone clipped the rear solar array, sending sparks flying. Alara gripped the wall. Her heart-pounding. Scrap stood on the console, his small body rigid, his eyes locked on the drones. "They want you back," Leela said through gritted teeth. Another drone fired a neural net designed to paralyze bio-targets. It hit the hull and spread like black lightning. Scrap suddenly leapt onto the viewport and roared. It was not a loud sound, but it was deep, a vibration that shook the metal beneath their feet. The net flickered, then shattered. The drone stuttered midair as if confused. Then Scrap opened his mouth and fire erupted. Not the orange flame of old Earth dragons, but a white-hot blaze that burned without smoke, without sound. It melted the lead drone. In an instant the other two tried to flee, but the fire curved through space like liquid, chasing them down until nothing remained but drifting ash. Silence returned. Lila stared at Scrap, then at Alara. What was that? Alara had no answer, but Scrap turned to her and made a soft chirping sound, almost like a question. In the days that followed, Scrap changed faster. His wings stretched longer. His body thickened. His hum became a low thrum that made the ship's lights flicker. Lila ran scans, but the readings made no sense. His cells were rewriting themselves, using energy from nowhere. Alara began having dreams. Not memories, but feelings. Flashes of a place with tall trees that glowed from within. Voices singing in a language without words. Hands holding. Her small hands her own. One night she woke gasping. Lila was there in seconds. "You okay?" Alara clutched her chest. "I was a child." Lila sat beside her. "I think I was taken." "Not mad." Lila nodded slowly. "The files mentioned that too. Some elves were captured from hidden enclaves, bred for looks but kept wild enough to be exotic. You might be one of them." Alara looked at her wings, then at Scrap. "If I was taken, then maybe others were too." "Maybe," Lila said. "And if the Xanthari are still hunting you, they might be hunting them." Scrap nudged Alara's hand. His scales warm. She made a decision. "We can't hide forever." Lila studied her face, then nodded. "Then we stop running." They plotted a course for the outer fringe, a place called Haven's End. A station built inside a hollowed asteroid where outcasts gathered humans, elves, rebels, even rogue AI, the kind of place the Xanthari avoided because it had no value to them. The journey took 12 days. During that time, Alara practiced speaking more. Not just words, but thoughts. "I feel tired." "I saw a star cluster. It was blue. I think Scrap understands." Malila listened without interrupting. One evening, as they passed a nebula painted in violet and gold, Alara stood at the viewport, her wings finally unfolding just a little. Layla watched from the doorway but said nothing. After a long while, Alara whispered, "They feel heavy." Lila stepped closer. "They carry a lot." Alara turned her storm gray eyes, meeting Lila's for the first time without looking away. "I want to remember who I was. Before they name me V739, you will," Lila said, "and you'll decide who you are." After Scrap climbed onto the console and let out a low rumble, the ship's lights dimmed, then brightened in response. "He's syncing with the systems," Lila said, amazed. Alara placed a hand on the wall and felt it too. A pulse, not mechanical but alive, like the ship was breathing with them. When they finally reached Haven's End, the station loomed like a sleeping beast, its surface pitted with docking ports and patched hulls. A voice crackled over the commandant. "Ify yourself." Lila keyed the mic. "This is the Iron Bloom salvage vessel, Captain Lila Cross, requesting temporary dock and supplies." Pause. "We don't take kindly to Xanthari spies." "We're not spies," Alara said, surprising herself. The voice hesitated. "Who was that?" "An elf who just got her name back." Another pause, then Dock 7 clear. "Come in." Slow as the Iron Bloom slid into the bay, Alara saw figures watching from the shadows, not hostile, just wary. A human with cybernetic arms, a tall being with feathered ears, a child holding a glowing rod. Lila turned to her. Red. Alara took a breath. Yes, they stepped onto the station together. Scrap perched on Alara's shoulder, his eyes scanning the crowd. A woman approached, older, with silver streaks in her dark hair and calm eyes. She wore a patchwork coat and carried no weapon. "Name's Maeve Ross," she said. "I heard you speak on the comm. You've got the old tongue in your voice, even if you don't know it yet." Lara frowned. "The old tongue." "The elf songs, the ones that shaped reality before the Dominion silenced them." Lila looked between them. "You can help her remember." Maybe Maeve said if she's willing to listen. Alara looked at Scrap. He blinked slowly. She nodded. That night in a small room lined with books and strange instruments, Maeve played a soft melody on a bone flute. The notes were simple, but they made Alara's skin tingle, close. "Your eyes," Maeve said. Alara did, and for the first time since she could remember, she did not see a catalog number. She saw a forest of light and a name whispered, not V739, but Alara the name. Her mother gave her. Tears fell silently. Scrap curled around her feet and hummed a harmony that made the walls vibrate. Lila watched from the doorway, her heart full. They were no longer just running, they were becoming. And somewhere far away, the Xanthari felt a shift in the silence. Something had awakened, and it remembered its name. The days on Haven's End settled into a quiet rhythm. Mornings began with Maeve's flute song, soft notes that pulled memories from Alara like threads from old cloth. Each melody unlocked something new. A scent of blooming night vines, the sound of wind through crystal leaves, the feel of another hand holding hers, small and warm. Her sister's hand, Scrap, grew faster now, nearly shoulder height to Lila, his wings brushing the ceiling when he stretched. His hum had deepened into a steady thrum that made tools rattle in their drawers and lights pulse in time. He no longer slept in a nest but coiled around Alara's sleeping mat like a living shield. Lila spent her time repairing the iron bloom and trading for supplies, but she also listened. She watched how Maeve guided Alara through fragments of elf song, how Alara's voice began to carry weight when she spoke, how her wings now stayed open most of the time, catching light like stained glass. One afternoon, Maeve called them to her room, the walls lined with data slates and ancient scrolls. "I've pieced it together," she said. "The Xanthari didn't just enslave elves. They harvested theme." Alara sat very still. "They found your enclave because your people sang in resonance, a frequency that aligns with star cores. It's not just music, it's power. They captured you not for beauty, but for your mind. Your neural pattern can sync with their warships. It makes them faster, stronger." Silent Leela frowned. "So they've been using elves as living batteries." "Worse," Maeve said. "They splice elf neural tissue into their command systems. The ships don't just obey. They feel, they hunger, and the more elves they take, the hungrier." The fleet becomes. Alara's hands trembled. "How many dozens? Maybe hundreds." Maeve's voice was gentle but firm. "And you, Alara, you're different. Your resonance is pure, unbroken, even after everything they did to you. Your frequency is still whole." Scrap nudged Alara's knee, his green eye glowing faintly. "That means I can stop them." "Not alone," Maeve said, "but maybe with help." That night, Alara stood on the observation deck of Haven's End looking out at the stars. She thought of the forest of light. The sister she could almost remember, the songs that once shaped worlds. Lila joined her. "You thinking about going back?" Alara nodded. "They took everything from us, our home, our names, our voices, but they left one thing." "What's that, or song?" Leela smiled faintly. "Then let's make sure they hear it." Over the next week, they gathered allies. A human engineer named Nora who could rewire Xanthari tech with scrap parts. A silent elf boy named Kale who communicated through light pulses from his fingertips. And a retired rebel pilot called June who flew a patched-up gunship named Ren Mara. The station's leader gave them clearance but warned them, "The Dominion has a new weapon, they call it the Silence." "It doesn't kill, it erases," Alara asked. "What that mean?" "It wipes memory, identity, language, even thought. If it hits you, you won't remember. Your name, your face, your fear, you'll just be empty." Scrap growled low in his throat. "Then we move fast," Lila said. They planned a raid on a Xanthari relay station near Proxima B, a small outpost, but one that linked to the main gene forge if they could. Plant a virus there, they could expose the truth about the elf harvest to every neutral system in the sector. The night before departure, Alara sat with Maeve one last time. "Teach me the full song," she said. Maeve hesitated. "It's dangerous if you sing. Wrong, it could burn your mind." "I'd rather burn than forget." So Maeve sang. Not just notes but meaning, not just sound but story. The song of the first elves who wove starlight into language. The song of mothers naming their children. The song of resistance. Whispered in Kajas. Alara listened until her bones ached. Then she sang back, soft at first, then stronger, until the walls of the room shimmered and the air tasted like rain scraps. Scales flared gold for a moment. Mara entered wide-eyed. "That was the twin flame song." Alara looked at her. "What's that?" The bond between elf and void drake, only the oldest pairs could sing it together. It doesn't just share thoughts, it shares purpose. Alara turned to Scrap, you and me. He bowed his head. They left at dawn, the iron bloom and wren slipping through the dark like shadows. June flew point, her sensors sharp. Her nerves calmer than her ship's rattling hull. They reached the relay station without alarm. A small dish-shaped structure orbiting a dead moon. Lila docked silently. You sure about this? Alara touched her collar scar. The place where the neural thread had been. They took my voice for years, now I take it back. Inside the station was cold and sterile, white corridors hummed with hidden power. Alara led the way, her bare feet silent on the floor. Scrap followed close, his claws clicking softly. They found the core chamber, a sphere of pulsing light suspended in magnetic rings. This is it, Lila said, planting the virus chip, but as she pressed it into, the console alarms blared, not sound but vibration deep in the bone. The silence had been triggered, a wave of gray energy rolled through the chamber. Not light, not sound, just absence. Alara gasped as her thoughts began to slip. Who am? Ilila grabbed her shoulders. Alara, look at me. But the name felt distant, like a star seen through fog. Scrap roared, not fire this time, but a soundless pulse that pushed back the gray for a moment. Alara saw Lila's eyes, fierce and bright. You are Alara. You are not a number. You are not a prize. You are a woman who sings to dragons. The words anchored her. She turned to the core and sang. Not the full twin flame song. Not yet, but a fragment. A single note, pure and sharp. The core flickered. The silence stuttered. Lila finished. Uploading the virus, they ran behind them. The station lights dimmed, then flared red back on the ship. June was already powering up. Hold on. They jumped to warp just as 3 Xanthari cruisers dropped out of fold space. Safe for now, June said. But they'll track the data. Burst. Lila looked at Ella. Are you okay? Alara held her head. Her memory still shaky but returning. I remembered my sister's name. What was it? Lyra. Scrap leaned against her side. Warm and solid, Mara contacted them an hour later. The virus worked. Every neutral station, every fringe colony, every rebel cell just received the full archive. Xanthari logs, elf testimonies, ship schematics. The truth is, out. Lila let out a breath. Then it starts. Alara looked out the viewport. Not just truth, justice, but the cost was heavy. That night, Alara dreamed again, not of light, but of silence, endless and cold. She woke shaking. Lila was there. Bad dream. They tried to take my name again. They won't succeed. How do you know? Because I have people who remember it for me. Scrap rested his head on her lap, his amber eye glowing softly. In the days that followed, more ships arrived at Haven's End. Not warships, but refugee vessels. Elves with dull eyes and broken wings. Humans with Xanthari brands. Children who flinched at loud sounds. Alara met them all. She didn't speak much, but she sang short songs of welcome, of healing, of home. And one by one they lifted their heads. Mara announced the formation of the Free Chorus, a coalition of survivors united not by weapons but by voice. Alila upgraded the Iron Bloom with salvaged Xanthari shields and human targeting systems. June trained pilots in evasion tactics. Nora built signal boosters to amplify elf song across frequencies, and Alara practiced with Scrap. They stood in the cargo bay, wings and scales gleaming. She sang a note. He answered with a hum. Together the air bent, light twisted. For a second the wall vanished, showing stars not as they were but as they could be. Mara watched from the doorway. You're ready for what? For the gene? Forget the heart of the Dominion. Alara looked at Lilawe. Go together always, Lila said. Scrap spread his wings fully for the first time, filling the bay with golden shadow. The silence had tried to erase them, but names once spoken cannot be unspoken, and songs, once sung, never truly end. The storm clouds of Neptune's dead moon swirled in endless gray spirals. Lightning crackled not from electricity, but from old orbital debris charged by solar winds. It was a place forgotten by most, a graveyard of broken satellites and failed colonies, but to Alara and Scrap it was perfect. They had come here to train. Lila watched from the cockpit of the Iron Bloom, hovering just outside the worst of the turbulence, her hands tight on the controls, her eyes never leaving the two figures. Below, Alara stood on a shattered platform, her wings wide. Her silver hair whipping in the wind. Scrap circled above her, his body now larger than a ground vehicle. his scales shimmering with heat, his mismatched eyes scanning the sky. They were learning. The twin flame link Mara had explained it was not just song or thought but a joining of will. A single mind in two bodies, one of flesh, one of fire. Elara closed her eyes and sang, not loud, not sharp. Just a single clear note that cut through the storm. Scrap answered not with sound but with movement. He banked hard, then dove straight toward her at the last second, folding his wings and landing so gently the platform did not crack. He lowered his head. Elara placed her palm on his brow. Light flared between them, gold and silver twisting like living thread. For a moment they were not elf and dragon, but something older, something whole. Lila whispered to herself. They're ready back aboard the ship. Nora and June waited with new schematics spread across the table. The Gene Forge orbits Proxima B, she said. It's not just a station. It's a living factory grown from biometal and elf bone. They keep the captives in neural suspension, their minds wired into the ship's core. Elara sat slowly. How many, at least? 200 confirmed, Maeve said, maybe more. Lila looked at her. We don't have to do this alone. The Free Chorus had grown ships from a dozen systems now pledged to the cause. Humans, elves, even a few Xanthari defectors who could not live with what their people had done. But Elara knew the truth. The Forge won't fall to weapons. Then how sung not just any song, the twin flame resonance. If I and Scrap can reach the core, we can wake the others. Not just free them, but turn the Forge against itself. It's risky, June said. If the silence hits you mid-link, you could both be lost. Elara looked at Scrap. We've been lost before. He rumbled in agreement. The plan formed quickly. June and the rebel fleet would draw the Dominion's warships away with a fake attack. Near the Kuiper Belt, Lila and Nora would pilot the Iron Bloom through the Forge's blind spot. A thermal vent on the dark side. Maeve would stay on Haven's End, broadcasting a low-frequency hum to shield their minds from the silence as long as possible, and Elara and Scrap would go in, the night before the raid. Elara stood alone on the observation deck. Lila found her there, nervous, not nervous. Elara said, just remembering what my mother told me. Songs are seeds, plant them in the right place, and they grow into forests. Lila smiled. Then let's give them a forest they'll never forget. They launched at dawn. The journey to Proxima B took 3 days. During that time, Elara barely spoke. She meditated with Scrap, their minds brushing against each other like leaves in when Nora modified the ship's hull to mimic Xanthari waste signatures so scanners would ignore them. June's voice came through the comm just before they split. Good luck, little singer, you two old pelotas. The Iron Bloom slipped. Into the Forge's shadow, the station loomed like a nightmare. A massive structure of bone-white metal pulsing with veins of blue light towers rose like ribs, and at its heart a sphere glowed faintly. The core. This is it, Lila said. Elara stood. She wore no armor, just a simple tunic. Her wings clean, her eyes clear. Scrap crouched beside her, his body tense. The vent opened with a hiss of stale air. They stepped inside. The corridor was warm, too warm, and smelled of ozone and something sweet like rotting fruit. The walls pulsed as if breathing. Elara placed a hand on the surface. They're alive, Scrap growled softly. They moved deeper. Passing chambers filled with suspended pods, each holding an elf. Their eyes closed, their wings, limp wires snaking from their temples into the wall. Elara's chest ached. Then they reached the central chamber, a vast dome with the core hanging in the center, a swirling mass of light and shadow. And standing before it, a figure tall and slender in a Xanthari command robe, the master architect. He turned slowly. 739. Elara flinched at the number but did not step back. My name is Elara, the architect smiled faintly. Names are temporary, obedience is forever. He raised a hand, and the silence activated, not a wave this time, but a beam, aimed straight at her mind. Elara staggered. Scrap roared and fire erupted, but the silence swallowed it whole. Her thoughts scattered. Who am I? Where am it? Then she felt it. A hum, faint but steady. Mara's broadcast, and beneath it Lila's voice in her memory. You are Elara. She grabbed onto that, and sang not a full song, just her name. Elara. The core flickered. The architect frowned. Impossible. Scrap lunged not at him but at the core. He bit into the light, and for a moment nothing happened. Then the core screamed. Not in sound but in memory. Every elf connected to it woke at once. Their songs erupted in a chorus of pain and rage and hope. The silence shattered. The architect fell to his knees, clutching his head. Alara walked toward him, not with anger, but with sorrow. You built a cage but forgot that birds remember the sky. She placed her hand on his forehead and sang the truth, not to hurt, but to reveal. Images flooded the forge's network. The hidden enclaves, the raids, the children taken, the songs stolen, the lies told. The broadcast went live. Every ship, every station, every Xanthari citizen saw it. The architect wept outside. The Dominion fleet faltered. Some ships powered down. Others turned on their commanders. The free chorus moved in. Not to destroy, but to rescue Lila, and Nora opened the pods one by one. June landed the Wren on the forge's spine and began cutting power lines. Mara's voice came through every comm channel. Lay down your weapons. The truth is free back in the core chamber. Alara stood with Scrap beside her. The architect looked up. Why didn't you kill me? Because I'm not what you made me to be, he whispered. What are you? A woman with a name and a future. The forge began to collapse, not from damage, but from release. The biometal softened. The lights dimmed, the core gently fading like a setting sun. Alara took one last look, then turned. Let's go home. As they stepped onto the iron bloom, the first rays of Proxima B's star touched the hull. Scrap curled around Alara's feet. Exhausted but proud, Lila hugged her tight. You did it. We did it. Above them, the Dominion crumbled, not with fire but with truth. And somewhere in the void, 100 newly freed elves whispered a single name, Alara. Not as a weapon, but as a promise. The Dominion did not fall in a single day, but it cracked, and the cracks spread like starlight through glass. News of the Geneforge broadcast reached every corner of known space systems that once paid tribute, now demanded answers. Colonies that stayed silent now spoke up, and the Xanthari Council fractured, some calling for reform, others for war, but most simply for survival. Alara did not watch the collapse from a throne or a command deck. She watched it from the cargo bay of the Iron Bloom, where newly freed elves gathered wrapped in thermal blankets, their wings still weak, their voices still soft. She sat among them, not as a leader, but as one of them. A young elf with ash-blonde hair clung to her sleeve. They called me V4. Alara took her hand gently. You can choose a new name. The girl looked down, then whispered, Mira. It means wonder. Mira nodded, tears in her eyes. Scrap lay nearby, his massive body curled like a protective wall, his breath warm and steady, his scales dimmed to a soft bronze. After the forge he had not roared once, but his presence alone calmed the frightened. Leela moved through the bay, handing out food packets and clean clothes. She spoke little, but her actions said everything. You are safe. You are seen. You belong. Mara arrived 2 days later aboard a converted medical frigate filled with healers, linguists, and counselors. The free chorus is growing, she told Alara. We've found 3 more enclaves hidden in the outer arms. 2 were empty, but 1 had children. Alara's breath caught. Lira, don't know yet, but we're looking. That night Alara stood on the observation deck, the stars clearer now without the Dominion signal jamming. The sky. Lila joined her, thinking about her. I have to go back to the Forest of Light, not to live there too. Remember, Leela nodded. I'll fly you, you don't have to. I know, but I want to. Scrap padded up behind them and rested his chin on Alara's shoulder, his amber eye reflecting the stars. The journey took 6 days. They passed refugee convoys, human and elf ships traveling together, former enemies now sharing rations and stories near the Veil. Nebula, they saw a Xanthari cruiser flying a white banner, not in surrender but in truce, its crew requesting guidance on how to dismantle their own neural harvest labs. Progress is slow, Lila said. But it's real. Alara replied. When they reached the coordinates Maeve had decoded from Alara's memories, there was nothing at first, just empty space. Then Scrap hummed a low note and a ripple appeared. In the void, like water disturbed by a stone. He's opening the veil. The hidden enclave shimmered into view. A cluster of living trees grown into ships, their bark glowing with soft blue veins, their leaves singing in a language older than Star Solara's. Breath left her, she stepped onto the nearest platform. Barefoot figures emerged from the trees, tall elves with wings like hers, eyes wide with caution. Then recognition, an older woman stepped forward. Her face lined with sorrow and strength. Ilariu. Remember me, you were just a child when they took you. Alara's voice broke. Where is Lyra? The woman's eyes filled. She did not return. Ilara sank to her knees. Scrap lay beside her and pressed his forehead to her back. The woman knelt too. But your song, did she? Placed a hand on Ilara's head. You sang through the silence and we heard you. In the days that followed, Ilara walked the enclave, learning its rhythms, helping rebuild what was broken, teaching the young ones that their names were theirs to keep. But she did not stay one evening. She stood with Lila at the edge of the platform. You could live here. Ilara looked at the glowing trees, then at the stars beyond. My place is out there, where people still don't know their names. Leela smiled. Then let's go back. On the Iron Bloom they received a message from June. New ships at the fringe border. Not Syntheri, unknown design, they're asking for you by name. Ilara frowned. Why me? Because you're not a weapon anymore. You're a bridge. They arrived at Havens, and to find a small fleet waiting, 3 vessels sleek and silver with no markings. But their hulls bore symbols that looked like intertwined wings and flames. Their leader stepped forward. A woman with dark skin and eyes that held galaxies. We come from the outer veil, she said. Our people heard the twin flame song. We thought the void drakes were gone. We thought the elf singers were lost. Elara stood tall. We were hidden, not gone. The woman bowed. We seek alliance, not for war, but for memory. We want to learn the old songs before they fade. Lara looked at Scrap. He blinked slowly. Then she turned to the crowd that had gathered, humans, elves, former slaves, rebels, and even a few Zenthari reformers. I will teach you, not just songs, but how to listen. In the weeks that followed, Ilara held daily gatherings in the main bay of Haven's End. She did not stand on a stage. She sat on the floor and invited others to join. She taught them that a name is a promise, that a song is a map, that silence is not peace. But the absence of voice. Scrap lay beside her always. His presence a reminder that even the smallest flame can light the dark. Leela kept flying. The Iron Bloom not as a warship, but as a rescue vessel. She picked up stragglers from dead zones, brought medicine to isolated colonies, and sometimes just sat with someone who needed to remember. They were human. Mara declared the Free Chorus. Now the Free Chorus and Flame, a union of voice and fire. Nora built schools inside old freighters. June trained pilots to fly not just with skill but with care, and Ilara became a story. Not the kind told in grand halls but in quiet moments. A mother whispering to her child, you are not what they called you. You are who you choose to be. A refugee tracing letters in the dust. My name is Rhea, young elf standing for the first time without fear. My wings are mine. One night as the Iron Bloom drifted near the rings of Saturn, Lila found Ilara on the roof of the ship. Scrap beside her. You ever miss the quiet? Ilara smiled. The quiet was empty. This is full. Scrap sneezed, a tiny spark that floated into the stars. Lila sat beside her. What now? Now we keep going. Because somewhere out there is another V739 waiting to become Ilara. And they deserve a name. And a future. And maybe even a dragon who believes in them. The ship turned toward the unknown, not with weapons but with open doors. And in the dark between stars, a song began again. Soft at first, then stronger, carried on wings of silver and scales of fire. A name spoken, a life reclaimed. A future written not in blood but in light.